Strawn, and executive producer Robert Campbell. Do we have Peter Strawn, or has he run off?
He's gone to the loo.
Ah. Yeah, you seem a long way away. No, not at all. Fine.
Okay, then
If we could start with you, Peter Kosminsky. Where do you begin when you're approaching two 500-page novels, very well known? You want to recreate Tudor England. Where is the start?
Well, the start is Peter Strawn's scripts. You know, many people have done incredible work on this show, but most people I've spoken to acknowledge that Peter's scripts are some of the best scripts they've ever read. Certainly they are the best scripts I've ever read. I knew the books, 1,000 pages before Paul bring up the bodies. To turn that, I write a bit, to turn that into 6 hours as coaching for him, and as it's pretty extraordinary. So, like any director, you start with a script. I've always felt that the director really only has 2 jobs on a film. One is to get the scripts right. Well, that was already done. And the other is to cast the right people. And then sort of stay out their way, really. And try not to say anything unhelpful.
And Peter Strawn, welcome. Tell us, what were the challenges involved in taking Hilary Mantel's 2 books and turning them into a television series?
I think the first challenge was to find a spine that could act as a kind of guide rope, because they're such huge books and so layered and epic. To find a kind of a through line for the dramas through that, which I'd sort of decided was about revenge, which is there in the novels, though there's so much more in the novels. But it's about Thomas setting out to avenge once he's fallen, and then the complications that ensue from that. Really. So it was that, and then it was imposing this artificial, in a way, 6-part, 6-chunk structure on these 2 large novels, and finding a way of finding the beginning and end to those episodes.
And Mark Rylance, you haven't done a major TV lead probably since The Government Inspector. What was it that made you want to come back to TV with this role?
My wife said the books were very good. And I liked working with Peter. Yeah, and obviously the part was a wonderful part.
And can you say a bit more about the part? What did you see in it? What intrigued you?
Well, there must be a few characters written in literature that have so many of their thoughts and judgments written, and then the fact that he keeps all of that close to his chest and doesn't reveal it, that he doesn't show very much. That seemed very challenging. Because I expect a lot of people who watch the program will have read the books, so to be able to manifest him in some way that would not limit their people's already potent imagination of who he is, and yet would be a real person. That seemed a challenge.
And for you, Claire, Anne Boleyn's the sort of figure that a lot of people might think they know a bit about already. What was your approach to her? How did you approach her differently from people's perceived wisdom?
Well, I couldn't, because we all, especially in England, you learn about the Tudors in primary school, and especially Anne Boleyn, because she's just fascinating, and you know already the sort of preconceived ideas of what she's like. But I read the books way before reading Peter's script, so I already in my head had the revelation that was sort of like what Hilary thought of Anne. or what she didn't think, because I just thought she was a mystery. Even then, you still don't get any idea of what she's like. I don't think Hilary tries to figure her out in any way. So I sort of tried not to figure her out in any way, really. I think because so much of that essence of her went from the books into the script, I just sort of, you don't think about the fact that she, had 6 fingers or, loads of warts and stuff, because that's not what this is about. So, yeah. I don't know, that's the question at all.
It did actually. Can you tell me a little bit about just watching that final scene between Anne and Cromwell? What was it like for you two both to play those scenes when so much is unspoken?
Well, that was a very extraordinary day because we were filming in Penshurst in the long gallery upstairs at Penshurst, and one knew that certain hundreds of years before, Henry and Anne had walked in that very room. So there were a number of occasions where we were filming, a bit like with the Governor's Inspector. That was only a year away when we filmed at Charing Cross. But here it was hundreds of years. But certainly I was aware of that. I thought, and one day walked around here with Henry and looked out these windows. I imagined some of the wood and surfaces are the same in there. I don't know, it was always not nice to act with Claire. It was always a bit of danger in her eyes.
Was being in some of the actual locations, and certainly in houses and manor houses that Henry might have frequented, did that add some sort of charge to the filming?
Yeah.
Or does it help performance?
Yeah, I mean, also because when you're filming those sorts of houses, you can't really take liberties. It's not really like being on a modern set where it's okay if there's, someone walks around in the background. Everything is so exactly, and the design is so specific, and there's nothing. Everyone like the things. I just noticed, like watching it, that the things that people have, like a dagger and a pouch, and things that just we'd never notice as an audience necessarily. But when you turn up on set, everybody is this full person, and the set of this full set, and you just walk on, and you don't have to do anything. It's amazing. And Peter's crews are always as well. There's not thousands of people on set that you don't know everyone's name, and every job that everyone does, and everyone's working all the time. So you never really feel like you have to go, wait a second, hang on, let's get back to reality. It's not like we get changed either in between. We're wearing those costumes all the time.
And when the acting fails, we can do a tour of the West Country tune at home. Tommy and Anne tour.
The National Trust would have you. Colin, sorry, you're a long way over there. Can you tell me, you bought the rights to the novels, can you tell me what your thinking was? It's tremendously popular, but also tremendously complicated.
Well, I think, like everybody else, I was fascinated by how Hilary had taken this character who had been previously portrayed in history as a sort of two-dimensional villain, and turned him into this very complex, rich, interesting character who came from humble backgrounds and ended at the highest level of the Tudor court and had to navigate the moral complexities of the exercise of power. And I think the contemporary audiences now, sort of post The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, or even The Missing, are fascinated by characters that cross moral lines. And in the character of Cromwell, you have a man who's trapped between trying to do the right thing and surviving, and what he has to do to survive. And I just thought that was in the way that Hilary had sort of re-energized the historical drama, the historical novel, excuse me. I thought that we could create a historical television, drama for the new world, for the new era, and sort of blow the cobwebs out of it. And I hope that's what we've done.
How closely, and I guess this goes to everyone, but how closely was Hilary Mantel involved in the production?
Certainly at the script level. I met before I started, and then throughout writing all the episodes, I would email her or ring her and speak to her or meet her, and she was always very generous and helpful and supportive and full of ideas. And she said, I remember saying at the very beginning, she said that there's about 2/3 more that I didn't put in the novel, so of all the other things that I thought of doing and didn't do. So, if you're thinking you have to go a different way, let me know and I can maybe give you some suggestions. And she always did.
And was it at all, I mean, perhaps for Peter Kosminsky, was it at all daunting knowing that you had these very successful, very popular novels behind you?
Daunting doesn't even begin.
Daunting? That's going to be the understatement of the year. You know, I'd done nothing like this. And, you know, Colin assembled a pretty impressive starting point. So, yeah, it was daunting. But Hilary, to pick up on what Peter said, you know, when I came on board, Hilary was fantastically welcoming. She invited me to her home. She made all her research materials available. Was instantly helpful. And, you know, because of my documentary background, I like to surround myself with research. We hired a researcher straight away. I spoke to a number of historians. And, you know, normally when you speak to a sort of academic expert about anyone who has, if you like, popularized an area that they consider to be their territory, they're pretty down on them. And what was extraordinary is in the half a dozen historians I spoke to during my preparation period, they were all incredibly complimentary about Hilary and her research. 5 years she spent researching this before she put a word on the page. But, you know, I came into this with a particular style of filmmaking. What was so wonderful and liberating for me was that when we met, she said, when I was thinking about this as film, I was imagining the handheld camera. I was imagining the boom occasionally accidentally dropping into shot. And she said, if I could give you one piece of advice, it's to remember that these characters do not know that they are in history. For them, this is real life. That they don't, you know, Henry doesn't know he's going to have 6 wives. Anne doesn't know her end. As far as they're concerned, if they make one decision, their life goes that way. If they make another decision, their life goes in a completely different direction, as it is for us, sliding doors, you know. And that was, I think, what we all tried to do, was get that feeling in the shooting style, in the way the costumes worked, in the way Pat Campbell designed it, in the way Gavin shot it, we were doing it exactly as if we would be shooting a contemporary drama today, acting it in exactly. You know, I've worked with Claire, with Mark and with Damian before, all on contemporary pieces. And we worked in exactly the same way as if we were doing a contemporary piece.
So if people were to ask how authentic is what they've just seen, I presume your answer is as authentic as you could possibly make it. I mean, that's...
Well, hang on. You know, the Wolf Hall is revisionist history. No doubt about it. You know, there are a lot of people who take strong exception to Hilary Mantel's interpretation of these events, particularly, and I see Anton Lesser sitting here, particularly her interpretation of Sir Thomas More. So, is this the truth? I have no idea. We set out to shoot Peter's scripts. Peter, I think, set out to faithfully adapt Hilary's books, which we all admire. This is our attempt to bring Hilary's vision through Peter to the screen. It's no more or less than that, really.
But by authenticity, what I meant was the costumes, the actuality of living in that world, the light.
Well, Peter, talk about the lighting, because I mean, what you saw today was all shot with can. All the nighttime shots were shot with can. There was no additional lamps. I mean,
well, Gavin Finney, the DOP, is here, and you know he could speak more authoritatively about this. But with the advent of the Alexa camera, it is actually possible to shoot by candlelight. And what, you know, this picking up what Mark and Claire was saying, that one of the extraordinary things was to be in some of these rooms where the characters we were depicting had stood, and to light the rooms as they had been built to be lit. Not you know, by floodlights, space lanterns in the ceiling, but by candlelight. I mean, Saskia Reeves is here. We played one scene which had 6 candles at the beginning with Mark, and ended up just with 1 lit. And yet you know, you can see it plays beautifully in a wonderful Alexa vision. So, you know, the technology has allowed us to get a level of authenticity. Beyond that, yes, we decided not in the end to shoot in Belgium. We brought Wolf Hall back to the Tudor houses and palaces of southern England.
You asked for that.
Yeah, I think originally there was some thought.
I mean, you know, there were tax advantages to shoot in Belgium originally, but when the UK tax credit came into play, it allowed us to shoot back here, and that was unequivocally why, you know, one of the great pluses of the whole production was that finally we could afford to actually shoot it here on all those National Trust locations.
But in addition to that, Joanna Eatwell, the costume designer, spent weeks at the V&A researching, and I think you should actually ask Mark about the authenticity of the costume, because he and Claire had to deal with them on a daily basis, and they weren't without their challenges, really.
So, Mark, Claire, take us through the promotion involved in having to wear those costumes.
Well, they just take a while to put on and off. Some of those days. But I think they're pretty good. I think the cod pieces are too small. No, it's true. I think it was a director from our American producers, PBS, like small cod pieces. They always seem to be tucked away rather conveniently. No pictures I don't need.
But no, I mean, nothing was like, there were no zips or anything.
No Velcro.
The no Velcro, damn it, and everything. I mean, the thing I remember, and I think Charity will agree with me here, is pins, lots and lots of brass pins in various body parts. Because what they used to do was pin everything up, and everything was pinned and everything, and so everything was pinned and everything was pinned. So yeah, but in the end, you sort of get into a bit of a rhythm with it. But the fur was quite difficult, I think. The fur, lots of fur.
They were in the middle of a mini ice age at that point.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of fur.
We, unfortunately, were not shooting in an ice age or anything like it.
And just before we open up, one final question for Peter Strawn. It had occurred to me, thinking back to the novels, that you might have considered using a voiceover of some sort, or some easier way for the audience to get inside Cromwell's head. I wondered if you did consider that and what the thinking was to ultimately reject it.
No, I never considered that. Never use a voiceover unless it's bringing, unless there's a gap between what's being said and what's happening, which would have been the case here. So the challenge was to bring that internal world of Cromwell and find either dialogue or visual means of getting that within a world out there onto the screen. So no, we never tried voiceover with it at all.
Okay. Let's have...
Actually, Benjamin, before you throw
Yes,
it
sorry,
over,
yes.
can I just acknowledge somebody here who hasn't been mentioned yet, without whom this would never have happened the way it happened. Mark Pybus, the producer.
Okay, who has a question? Yes, gentleman at the front.
How far would you agree that the greatest actuality was the nature of the king, this intelligent, religious, well-educated young man who rose to total power? With one word or humour from him, people can rise and fall. And as he grew older and older, we saw this more and more. And it's just his tremendous power. I just wonder how much you felt this.
I felt it very much in all the scenes. I mean, we only saw one scene.
That's why, well, that's really why I'm asking. I'm sure we've got much more to see.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
But we felt him, but I suppose I wanted to feel him that brooding or brilliant presence.
Well, he's a younger
I
man
wanted
now,
to
isn't
feel
he?
it more and more.
But in the cosmology of the period, whatever whim he has, whatever desire, whatever he thinks, is what God is there. He's there by God's will, and if he's a bad king, then the nation deserves a bad king. If he's a good king, then lucky us. But that would be Cromwell's view of him, that he cannot. If he's wrong, God's wrong. So he's he's powerful in a way that we don't imagine anymore for human beings.
Well, I do imagine it.
Who's your king then?
I'm wondering whether he was deliberately kept that power, was mentioned, of course.
I was sort of Solzhenitsyn and the way he talked about Stalin as the spider in the centre of the web. The closer you get to that, the more powerful you become, but the more dangerous it becomes as well. And through the episodes, Mark gets closer and closer to Henry, right up until the very last shot, in fact, of...
Because Norfolk was trembling for his position throughout. Not only was he related to Anne Boleyn, but his position at court, everything depended on the king's favour.
But
It wasn't just Wolsey, it wasn't just any of the people we saw. Maybe I'm impatient, but it's all going to come.
Well, it is a tribute to the both Peters that they boldly, I mean, the book is told through Cromwell's point of view. It's his view of the world, it's his view of war that Hilary is writing. And in the television adaptation, we don't see characters until Cromwell meets them. So, it was a big decision to hold Anne Boleyn and Henry right to the end, because we don't meet them until Cromwell meets them. So
I love the scene. I mustn't give on talking. Lots of other people have much to say.
I'm sure there will be time in the bar afterwards. In the meantime, there was a question at the back there. I think there are microphones, by the way, of people.
Hi, can I ask Claire and Mark if there was one particular scene that was especially challenging in this, one above any other that was, for whatever reason, especially hard to perform?
There's a lot more than that. Can you pick one?
Obviously, the death scenes are very difficult scenes.
Yeah. I don't know about difficult. I think I found most of the scenes a real challenge because there was so much going on that wasn't being said. I found it a lot easier as Anne and Cromwell got more comfortable with each other because they were saying what they were meaning for a change. But that was always the thing. They were always one step away from going back to, hang on a second, I don't actually trust you and what's going on here. But yeah, no, the execution was
The execution,
tricky.
your execution was a horrible scene down at Dover Castle.
Yeah. Also because there was like a gale force wind on an August day, like inexplicably it was like 4 degrees and essays were falling over and everyone's getting blown around, and it was honestly like it was quite biblical. But you sort of forget about when you're in a scene that's so important and happened and is so crucial to sort of get right. When the elements sort of happen like that, you just sort of have to go with it, and I think it really helped. But it helped in a kind of, well, it was a whirlwind really, the whole thing.
Executions are a little too easy to imagine these days, aren't they? Don't look very far. Last time I was in this subject matter was a film called The Other Boleyn Girl, and they previewed it to audiences in America, asking questions, who's your favourite character, what's the favourite bit, what's the bit you hate the most? And the surveys came back, we hate it when Anne Boleyn gets killed, we hate it. That's a terrible bit. And apparently at a producers' meeting, one of the producers said, wait a minute. Does she have to die? Why can't I just give her a holiday home down the coast?
I did feel like, should we be saying spoiler alert or something? In the way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Who's next? There's someone up on the balcony in the middle. And then we'll come to you after that.
Question for the Peters. I wonder how useful, you talked earlier about how it's this revisionist history. I wonder how useful or kind of almost essential it was to you to do as much research as you could on the real history as well, so that you knew you had some context for it. Was it just a case of working from the novel?
I know absolutely nothing about Tudor history whatsoever. I got a phone call, Harrison and Peter, I got a phone call inviting me, when I was writing the episodes, inviting me to a conference that was for historical literature. And literally as I was listening to this invitation, I looked down at my desk and there was the Dummy's Guide to the Elizabethans, which is pretty much where I'm at historically. So I didn't. I just approached it as a drama. I just approached them as characters. But I know Peter did. So I had that kind of luxury in a way that I didn't have to worry about that. He did all the hard work.
Well, I have a documentary background, so it's a prop for me. You know, it's a sort of safety blanket. So we hired a researcher who did some fantastic work, was able to do essays on etiquette, on the way people ate, the way people dressed, the rhythms of life in that period. And I should say, of course, that Mark was for many years the artistic director of the Globe, and was able to call on a number of research resources as well. And you arranged sessions where we would have talks about swordsmanship or talks about bowing. We all spent quite a lot of time learning about the difference between a Henrician bow and an Elizabethan bow, and where we should decide. And of course, one of the things that's difficult, and anyone who comes from a sort of factual world will know this, about these things, is that experts tend to be very dogmatic about things. There's absolutely no way that ... But of course, we all know from our own lives that things aren't quite as clear-cut as that. There wasn't a moment when the spoon was introduced uniformly throughout the upper echelons of English society. The spoon leached in over a period of decades. So we had to make decisions about whether Thomas More was a spoon kind of guy. And Berlin went for spoons in a big way.
Did you have any input on whether you went for spoons or not?
No.
I will say, in 35 years of vision, I have never met a director who has done more homework and was more prepared than Peter. It was daunting.
There was a gentleman up there.
Hello. Mark, you already mentioned that you were disappointed by the cod pieces, but I wanted to ask you, were there any other compromises that you had to make for the sake of ease, that if you had a bit more money or a bit more time, you would have gone back to...
That I had to make.
that you had to make, and indeed Peter, the director.
I wasn't personally disappointed by the cod pieces, only that I'm a bit more used to them than other people from being at the Globe for 10 years. But I can see for modern audiences, perhaps even more in America, they may not know exactly what's going on down there. I suppose I mean, I said this to Peter when we were first meeting about it. I feel like it maybe, you know, could have been 10 or longer episodes, even more episodes, a long time. Some of the wonderful work that the actors did, we've had to cut. So some wonderful performances won't even appear in front of the audience. Maybe they'll go onto a DVD, hopefully they will. And therefore also lots of Peter's wonderful distillation of the book. And so I think it's a very, very fantastically ambitious thing that the BBC's done, that Colin's done. But I'm sure if they had more funds, then they might have said, actually this material is so rich and all of the characters are so interesting, this could be more like 10 or 12 episodes. So I think it's remarkable what they've done. But I think with encouragement and support from the government, they do even more.
But I do want to make clear there is no hidden codpiece memo from some American. That wasn't the case.
Do we have another question? Yes, in the middle, lady there. There's a microphone and you wish for it.
Here comes the king.
Here comes
I think you probably should explain why you're dressed like that.
Why? Oh, it's not black tie.
You look fantastic.
When I come into the West End, I always dress up. I've been at the military awards, ladies and gentlemen, yes, honouring our overseas servicemen and women.
Thank you very much for coming. Yes, we had a question in the middle there.
Yeah, so this is for Claire and Mark and also now Damian. Now he's here. I wondered, this is kind of a similar question that was put to Peter, and how much kind of your own historical research did you do into the characters, or did you do very much, or did you stick very much to kind of Hillary's interpretation of history and of the characters?
I did I did as much as you possibly can about them, because there isn't really a lot left, to be honest, and everyone's got an opinion apparently. So I did read quite a lot, but that was more for me because she's not in the books as much, and you don't get any definite, exact sort of. I mean, I really wanted just some sort of actual thing, like someone saying she's exactly like that and exactly like that. But it was good in a way that I didn't know. But no, I definitely read quite a lot just to fill it out for me. And Hilary, I presume, read the same stuff because it's exactly the same. So, yeah.
I watched Carry On Henry. It's very good, yeah. It's very good. Yeah. No, I just thought the job was to serve Hillary's account of the story. It wasn't, for me, there wasn't much point in looking at other people's accounts. That wasn't the job.
And Damian?
I echo that, yes. I mean, it was interesting. It's interesting to read a reimagined history, isn't it? And then you come across an awful lot of actual history and scholarship, and you go and corroborate, with other sources, and you find out that actually Hillary's scholarship is faultless. So the main events, incidents, are real and true to life, and the moments when she chooses just to investigate the inner workings, the sort of more interior world of, certainly of Cromwell and the King and Anne and others, then she's free to play. But any other book I read didn't tell me much more in terms of historical accuracy than what Hilary had chosen to put in Wolf Hall anyway. But it's her version of events we're telling, that's right.
Could you say something about historical accuracy? Because some people will see you as Henry VIII and think, oh, hang on, I thought he was the fat guy in the Holbein, and you don't look like that. So can you say a bit more about this Henry that we're seeing?
We just watched episode 1, Damien.
Am I in it? I do show up at the end, I think. Well, Henry, yes, little known fact, but a good pub quiz answer, bit of knowledge, is that he actually had a 34-inch waist, long into his late 30s, and was the preeminent jouster, rider, hunter, sportsman of his generation. And one or two people might contend that, but that's how I played him. And he remained slim and a formidable athlete long into his late 30s. And there's, again, some contention about why he suddenly ballooned in this rather sort of Elvis-like fashion. But his horse did roll on him and knock him unconscious for 2 hours, and he was unable to joust, hunt, be the athlete that he had been previously from that point onwards, and then he ballooned to this 54-inch waist in the space of, well, in the last 10 years of his life, actually. But he was, I'm not going to pretend that he didn't have better legs than I do, because he did. He was very proud of his calf, the shape of his calf, and he lauded it over Philip the Fair of France, because he felt his calf was superior. And he was, of course, he was a broad man with a big chest, but he was always svelte and slim-waisted until much later on.
And did his psychology change as well? Because he initially, at least, doesn't appear to be the sort of man who would be doing multiple beheadings and treating people monstrously.
Well, he got off to quite a good start by lopping off a couple of heads when he was only 18 years old, when he acceded the throne. Buckingham was one of the first to go. Stupid Buckingham, was it, Peter? Silly Buckingham? Poor old Buckingham got a nickname of Vain Buckingham, something like that. Anyway, Buckingham liked his gardens, but Buckingham had to go because he was a sympathiser for the other side. So he had history, quite early on. But certainly, I mean, Peter, what do you think? Certainly there are books written around the year 1536, and that being the year that his personality irrevocably changed, and he became irascible, even more temperamental, more volatile, and Yes, and became genocidal, probably isn't stretching the point.
Remember whose son he was?
Yeah.
He was Henry VII's son, who was a very unusual individual, particularly in later life. And Henry had an interesting childhood, because of course he wasn't expected to be king. He was the second son. Arthur was supposed to be king. And so Henry, well, grew up with the women, really. He was very close to his mother. I mean, Damian's being rather modest, you know, and unfortunately you only just get a glimpse of episode 1, but the portrayal is extraordinary, and what he's, I think, achieved is to show the many facets of the man. You know, this was a guy who was, as well as an athlete, he was an architect. He designed a number of the properties he lived in. He was a musician. He was extremely accomplished academically. He was a great linguist, and he designed clothes, some of which he wore. He was a great lover of hats, like many. But he was, to me at least, the original Renaissance man. You know, and saving his presence, it seemed to me that the number one essential for casting Henry VIII was charisma. It was absolutely clear to me from the reading I did and from what Hilary said and the material she made available to me that this was an extraordinarily charismatic man. So we approached a number of very charismatic actors. Unfortunately, none of them were available.
It's going on my tombstone, best available. That's all you can be.
We have time for one more question, I think, and there's a gentleman here.
Mr. Lewis, you've previously been relatively reticent about speaking about your background or your past. What was it about this role that made you feel willing to open up about how your education helped you prepare for it? And to the other actors, did you draw on your life experience at all to help you with your roles?
Who wants to go first, David?
I'm still extremely reticent about my past. I don't want to talk about it. No. Did I open up? What did I say?
Well, you said on Radio 4 that you felt that Eton helped you learn to be
yes. No, in case there was, that's open to misinterpretation. I can see that. Simply the structures of a boarding school, the regiment, the more sort of regimented nature of a boarding school. The hierarchical nature of a boarding school seemed to me at times not dissimilar from the Tudor court. There's, you know, and it's a broad and simplistic point, clearly. But there are similarities. There's, you know, there's a head boy and there are prefects, and
a lot of cane.
And lots of corporal punishment. Hanging had stopped by the time I was in Italy, which is good. I don't know. Sorry, I can't give a very serious answer. You've called me out. What Mark and Claire?
What was the second part of the question?
Did you draw on your life experiences at all to help you with your roles?
No.
Have you ever been beheaded?
I've never been beheaded. I can't speak French. No, I'm not in no way similar to Anne at all. At all. Apart from, you know, the meanness and cruelty to other people and stuff like that. No.
And Mark, did you draw on your life experiences at all for the role?
Yeah, I always do, yeah. Not just what I've experienced, but what friends and people I know have experienced and told me about. Yeah, what else would I draw on?
Okay, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much.
Thank you once more.
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, just to follow up on something Peter said in his opening remarks, the BBC, Ben Stevenson and Polly Hill, who is here, thank you, Polly, they greenlit Wolf Hall on the back of Peter's first script. There is no other broadcaster anywhere, let alone England, that would have done that. This would not have been made without the BBC. And for those journalists in the room Episode 2 is online from tomorrow morning at 9:30. So if you want to see episode 2, you can see it then. Thank you.
Earlier, Ray, thank you very much.